In this episode of the School Podcast, we have Wilfred Webster. Yes, if you watched The Traitor, he was one of the superstars on there. But also, Wilfred had a really interesting upbringing, and he also has experience working in schools as a teacher. In this episode, yes, we talk about Wilfred's life, but we also try and add value for teachers and pretty much anyone who works in education. So I think this is a must watch and listen for everybody. Plus, of course, I need to thank Gadgetline for making this happen. World-class videos and pictures, guaranteed under 7K. Thank you, Gadgetline. I appreciate you. And I'm really looking forward to sharing this one. Check it out, guys. Wilfred.
Hello.
How are we, my friend? Thank you first for coming to Bristol, the Southwest, and being on the School Podcast. Yeah. Today, my intention is to dive in a little bit more about yourself. Also, you've got a lot of experience working in schools before you went on the famous TV show.
Yeah.
And I really want to dive into who you are, a bit about your mindset, and kind of why you do what you do. And obviously, being a School Podcast, most people who listen to this are teachers, they work in school, they work in education. So I would really kind of like to shed light on your story, but also any valuable inputs that you may share along the way. Cool. So in short, who is Wilfred Webster?
Who am I? A creative genius. No, I'm joking. a creative entrepreneur. I think that's the best way to put it. I think entrepreneur gets thrown around a lot, especially by young people these days. A lot. Where you go into schools and say, what do you want to do? Entrepreneur. And you say that classic question, in what? They go, I don't know. they don't really know. They just think it's somebody who makes loads of money. For me, it's about creativity.
That's the same as if you had loads of money, what would you invest in? Crypto?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Crypto. And then you're like, okay, yeah, this coin here. The one that doesn't exist. Yeah. For me, it's like creative entrepreneur. Like I love social media. I love being creative in all different aspects, and want to try and grow that. And I just creative person, man. And
at the moment, over the last 2 years, you have become famous.
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah, little Z-lister. No, joking. Yeah.
But why? How have you become famous? For everyone at home who doesn't know who you are, obviously for me, you've came into a few schools, and like the students might not necessarily know who you are, but the teachers all do. Right? Yeah. So like, tell me a bit more about yourself and how you got to become who you are now.
Do you know what? 2 years. It was so in 2019. Or the end of 2018, I started making social media content on TikTok. I'm not the kind of guy that does the dancing or anything. Most of it was actually school content. So who remembers when you was in year 7 and you pretend to get lost and turn up to school late? Like you turn up your lesson late and go, sorry miss, I got lost. Or, don't know, just things that were relatable. Who had that teacher who always told them a story about somebody swinging back on the chair and banging their head open? Like, these kind of things and then I ended up growing to about 200,000 followers just over doing stupid content about school and content that was relatable to people, and then got scouted for a TV show called The Circle actually initially, which is it's on Netflix. Yeah. I went and lived in Manchester for a month. So you go in the cast.
I remember you saying that they didn't select you.
And they didn't actually select me, so I wasted a month of my life there. And then a year later, the same production company, I seen on their Instagram that they were advertising for a psychological adventure game show. And I was like, that sounds like a bit of me. It sounds fun, right? And so I applied, and they already knew who I was because of the application that I did for The Circle. And then they just went through the stage with them, and they were like, yeah, we'll get you on. And then obviously I went on the Traitors. And then
smashed it apparently.
Yeah, it did really well, man. It was really hard. Like I found it was like a social experiment because it's never been done before. So they had to have welfare on site all the time, psychologists and psychiatric nurses and all kind of, because they just threw us in a castle and said, go, people are going to get murdered. Like, it was just really intense. So that for me was really hard. And for me, I had like this bit of a mental health sort of downfall after filming it, because we had to sit on it for about 6 months. So we filmed it in May, June, and it didn't come out till November, December. So that was really hard, knowing that I've just done something amazing. You don't know if it's going to be good. You don't know if people are going to like it. and it went, and then you're on this high.
How people are going to see you.
Yeah.
How you're going to be edited.
Yeah, but I always say, right, don't act like an idiot and you won't get edited in as an idiot.
Wow.
That's something that I say to everyone. If you're going on TV shows, podcasts, or even doing anything to do with social media,
I guess the
don't act
problem
like an
is,
idiot.
though, everyone's perception of being an idiot is different.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So yeah, I'm probably an idiot to a lot of people, really. But yeah, that's it, man. I think, and then I went on the Traitors, and then when it came out, it was pretty much word of mouth. It wasn't really advertised that much. It came out during the World Cup, so it was straight after like the England and Wales game. I think was the first episode. So lots of people were watching that game, and then yeah, it just blew
Snowballed
up.
from there.
Snowballed as well. It was like March. That's when it started proper going big, to the point where I was like, oh my God, this is changing my life. I was working for like the biggest charity in the UK at the time, one of the biggest, and I was like the manager of face-to-face fundraising. So, and then I had to quit that job because I was doing so many things, so many podcasts, so many different things, like TV stuff and whatever. I just felt like I couldn't take a salary from a charity if I can't put 100% into it.
Yeah,
I just thought it's not fair. So I left to the risk.
Let's take it back to a little
Cool.
bit. Before we talk a little bit about your childhood, I think it's important for everyone to know that you also worked in schools.
Yes, I did.
How did that come about?
Well, that's a strange one. So I went and toured as a dancer. So I finished school, I finished sixth form, didn't really want to stay in education. I think I had a bit of a difficult time in education, especially we'll talk about it in my later years in education. I was like, I just need to get out of school, do something I enjoy. Didn't want to go to university because I wasn't sure what I wanted to pursue.
That's good.
Yeah, I was
Don't
like,
just go because...
yeah, I was like, am I going to go and do dance when I don't know if I want to do anything with dance after? Let me actually try out dance first. Then I started auditioning, got a job working on another TV show as a backing dancer, did that. And then I got a phone call. So in the industry, you can be really busy, then not very busy for a period of time. So in that period of time,
that's the same as TV and film.
Same as everything. Social media, you can have a contract with a certain brand for 2 months and it will go dry for a couple of months. But yeah, now I got a phone call from Moira, who's she was deputy principal at the school I used to go to. She rang me and was like, what are you doing with your life right now? I was like, sort of, I don't know. I'm just auditioning. So do you want to be a TA in the performing arts in our school? Because I was pretty good at performing arts in school. I did really well grades wise. So I said, okay then. She said, only whilst you're looking for other work and just stay for however long. So I went there, and I don't know if it was part of the plan to keep me there.
Moira knows what she's doing.
Yeah, Moira knows. But the dance teacher ended up leaving, and I was team teaching at the time with this teacher, and they were like, do you want to take the classes? And the head of performing arts will plan them for you, help you plan the lessons at the beginning. So I ended up I was 19, ended up teaching unqualified. And I did pretty well, actually. I was teaching GCSE Expressive Arts. They no longer do it. But it was for me, it was great because it was about incorporating loads of different art forms into a lesson. So I could do dance, drama, media, film, that sort of stuff. And stayed there for 2 years, did really well in the Voyager, it was called at the time. I think it's Queen Catherine's now, in Peterborough. And then Moira left to be a head at another school. And she took me with her. She was like, I'll find you somewhere to live. Like I had a dance group, and that was part of the school that were competing in world championships and stuff. So I had like this big influence on young people, and she wanted me to try and mirror that at the other school. She wanted to take me with her. So she put me up in a travel lodge for 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, paid for it, and like got me in Elstree till she found me somewhere to live. And then, yeah, just stayed there for 2 years.
Because I guess she believed in you that much and the impact that you can have.
Well, this is my story.
It was kind of worth the investment, really.
Yeah, for me, it's like my impact on the students. I don't want to just impact students when I talk to them. It's about impacting teachers to never give up on the students. Like, we'll talk about what I was like in school, but she was the teacher that never gave up and seen something in me.
So Moira was your old teacher?
Yeah, she was my teacher. So
I had to ask you because I actually knew that. Sorry,
Yeah.
I felt like such a fraud asking you that question. I knew that. Yeah, sorry, guys.
Yeah, so she was my teacher.
It was like, wow. So she was your old teacher.
Yeah, but no, she got me back into school when I was excluded. Eventually got me back and pushed me into performing arts because she knew I'd be good at it. And then,
So your message is for teachers to never give up on a student.
Yeah.
So then you talked about how you was nearly excluded.
I was excluded.
You was excluded.
Yeah.
Permanently, or?
Yeah, permanently. I was excluded to the point where pupil referrals, I couldn't even go into one of them. So
okay, wow.
I had to go into the real world. I was a labourer for my dad for year 9, most of year 9. Yeah.
It's a bit different back then as well, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, I didn't get paid, so I was a slave. I was basically a slave for my dad. Like, it was really hard though for me as a young person. I say this to the young people as well, like a lot of the kids and the students we talk to is, you know, when someone's excluded, you know they miss school because they're always the one on the bike.
Yeah,
outside the school waiting for you to finish. And that's how I felt, but I was working. I couldn't even go see my friends. My dad was really strict. So I wasn't even allowed out at that time either to see friends.
So talk to me a little bit about your upbringing.
Well, it was weird. So my dad went around when we was born.
Okay.
He sort of had to go away somewhere. And yeah, and I lived with my mum. So I grew up in Liverpool, but we was between different hostels, had no money, that sort of stuff. My mum didn't really want me around hostels and that, because they're not very nice places. So I lived with family members. It's classed as care. I'd guess a lot of people class it as care still. But yeah, if you live with family members through this, whatever. But yeah, so I lived with different family members, went to various different primary schools, and it was really difficult, man.
How many primary schools?
Around 9.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was always jumping.
So potentially 1 a year on average, well,
yeah.
1.5 a year.
Yeah, and that was difficult because I always had to try and fit in. Like you would go to a new school and everyone's got their friendship groups already, so you're trying to make relationships quickly, trying to fit in.
Can you remember that?
Do you know what? No, not a lot. And when I go counselling now, man. I've been going counselling since I was about 15, 16, and the counsellor that I have has always been the same person, and she's always like, it's trauma for you because it was so hard for you. You don't really remember. I don't remember hardly anything from my childhood under the age of 7, 8. I remember certain events, but not a lot of it.
So then when you start to tell your story like you are now, there's an element where you're kind of detached from it.
Yeah. So I'm still opening my, what would they call a Pandora's box of emotions and feelings. I'm still finding that.
Have you discovered anything recently? Like a memory's come to light again and be like, oh.
Yeah, one of the saddest experiences. And yeah. So something I want to do when, I really want to do is, I lived in hostel before we lived with family and stuff. And I remember Christmas Day was really difficult. But it's one of the days that I don't remember living in hostels that much, but I do remember Christmas Day. And I remember they'll do whatever they could, the people who worked at the hostel, but you'd wake up, go down, everybody would have the same presents. It was like, they tried to make it a happy day, but it's a really sad day because everything's the same, and it was just a bit weird. So something I want to do eventually is try and get hostels that need support and get big companies to try and donate presents and stuff to make it, do you know what I mean, nice, because they could get hardly
There's a lot of money out there.
Yeah, there's a lot. They've got a lot of money, all these big corporations, toy companies and stuff, and you've got to look at the hostels, you've got to look at governments and councils. They don't fund them enough to be able to make these one day of the year that you might remember as a child who's going through a traumatic experience. The one day you remember, try and make it the happiest day and not this really gloomy, sad, didn't get much, didn't really understand when everybody else at school, because you try and hide that you're in a hostel. You don't want people to know you're in a hostel. Yeah, so then memories started coming back probably in the last year. I sort of opened that little box of trying to remember certain things, and that was something that came to me.
Do you think teenagers try to hide that? Or do you just think it's just not really a talking point so much? So obviously I've got my story when I went through secondary school, but I also couldn't tell you everyone just gets on, just does whatever. People just survive secondary school, whatever that looks like. But also people don't really care what people's backgrounds are to a certain level. Do you think you get good at just masking it, or do you think it's just you just don't know any different, so you just crack on type of thing?
Bro, I'll tell you something that will blow your mind, right? I was a PP kid, right? So we used to get free school meals. Not once did I ever collect a free school meal in secondary school because I was embarrassed. So my dad used to give us money, even though he knew, I don't know if I don't know if he knew that we was getting free school meals, because I don't think
That money would have stopped.
Yeah, but back in the days, this was over 15 years ago. I don't think there was much relationships and bridges built between parents and teachers. I think that wasn't there as much as it is today.
I feel like a lot of schools still struggle.
Yeah,
really struggle.
And that's why he was just like, oh, I have money. I don't think he understood that we was getting free school meals, but he used to get this little ticket and never took that ticket. Even though I could have got extra food and whatever, I was just embarrassed because I knew that I didn't want to be a free school meal kid. And
why?
Don't know, I just didn't want to see.
What was your thinking at that time?
It was embarrassment. It's just like, I don't want people to know, because I went to a school and there was a lot of PP kids, now I think about it, but it was just, I was one of the cool kids, you know, do you know what I mean? I'd always have, my dad did have money at times, and he'd always make sure that we wore nice clothes and stuff, so you didn't want to throw that mask off. Do you know what I mean? You're wearing, like back in the days, it was Henry Lloyd and Teddy Smith and all this sort of stuff. He was wearing all these brand new Nike Shocks. Do you remember Nike Shocks? We were wearing them, and we didn't want people to know that.
But he had Adidas popper trousers.
Oh no, I had the Kappa with the Kappa ones.
Was it Adidas?
Kappa, one of them. Yeah, I remember them. The buttons. He used to pop them up. No idea what that was for though. He decided, should we just pop our legs out? Yeah. But yeah,
for the summers that we didn't have.
Yeah, the summers we didn't have. But that's for me. It was embarrassment. It was, I didn't want people to know that. I think students probably didn't even know what free school meals meant.
No.
I don't even think they knew, but I knew personally. I think I knew. I don't know. I just knew there was something different. So I was like, I don't want to be this kid to go over there. So for however long I was in secondary school, I never collected them. Never, ever, ever. So can I claim that back? Can I claim it? No, I'm joking.
In your taxes.
Yeah.
So was finances quite tight at times when you was a teenager, or?
Yeah, I think.
Did your dad come back from working?
Yeah.
And things started to be a little bit better, like how?
Yeah, my dad's a strange guy, so he'll have money and then not have money and have money. It's just, and he'll be working and he won't be working. He's a bricklayer, right? So times of the year are hard as well. So yeah, we'd have money, then not have money. And my mum and dad were always getting back together and splitting up. Wow. Always, constantly. So there'll be a point where my mum would leave my dad and we'd have to fend for ourselves, like me and my brothers. Was my sister born at that point? Yeah, my youngest sister, but my mum would always take her. So it was like, and she took me once when I was in secondary school, but I decided I wanted to go back to Peterborough just because my friends were there. I didn't want to start a new secondary school. I was like, look, I've been through too many school changes. I just want to go back to Peterborough. And then, yeah, it was just me and my brother. My dad was always like working or doing away and doing his own thing and whatever. And I think he struggled mentally as well at the time. You know, I remember him saying to me recently, actually, he was talking about their relationship and said, you know, because they kept breaking up, getting back together. Apparently when you split up with someone, it's like a bereavement, but they're still there and it's really hard. So he had to go through that multiple times, same as my mum. So they had this really weird, toxic relationship. And I felt like I was naughty in school because I wanted attention. Now I think back to it. So the only attention I could get at home was if I was excluded or told off. And my dad was really strict. So we used to get beat up or whatever when we go home. He'd be really like upset with us.
But you got attention.
But it was attention, and the only attention I'd get is either from that or from when I was boxing. So he was an ex-professional boxer. So if I was fighting and winning or training, and he owned his own boxing gym as well, so that'd be okay. Like he'd give me attention then. So that's why I really wanted to get into it, because it was like, my dad's pushing me and work. Like, yeah, he was supporting me.
So would you say your father's a bit more of like a typical masculine man?
Yeah, 100%, man. My dad's like, when you picture an ex-professional boxer who's a brickie, who's done some weird things in his life, like he just, you can see it. And as he's got older, he's chilled out. He's a really good grandparent. He's a good parent now. Back in the days, he knew it was up and down and it was toxic because of the relationship.
Have you had heart-to-hearts with your dad?
Yeah, I had my first heart-to-heart when...
And how was that? Like, man-to-man? Like...
Do you know what? It was really easy. It was really weird. There was only probably 2 sentences said. It was me, we were having a drink. We're on the way back from watching a boxing show. I must have been about 21, 22. Probably a couple of years older, I can't really remember. And we sat in the car and I just said, why was my childhood so hard?
Wow.
And he just started crying.
Wow.
And said he's sorry.
Wow.
And then we both cried and then that was it. And I feel like since then as well, he's tried to be a better dad.
I just want to take a quick moment to thank one of our school podcast sponsors, Access Education. The guys at Access Education are on a mission to give every school the freedom to put education first. And they do this by bringing all your software needs into one place. Whether it is financial management, HR, payroll, parent communication, or classroom content and assessments, they have you covered. They work with over 9,000 maintained schools, academies, MATs, and independent schools across the UK. On another note, I've personally worked with Access Education for a number of years. The team, the work they're doing is unbelievable. So hit all the links in the bio, check them out, and yeah, let's get back to this podcast. What gave you the courage to say that?
I had a beer.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it came from. I think it was going to the boxing show and thinking I did so well in boxing and I made you so proud, but my life was still really hard. Like, if you loved me, why was my life so hard all the time? Like, and I know he loves me.
And he said sorry.
Yeah, and he said sorry, and then...
What did you learn from that?
What did I learn from that?
Did you expect him to say sorry?
No, I expected it. My dad's always, he's not great sometimes at taking accountability for things.
A lot of parents are not, right?
Yeah, so normally he'd blame my mum and vice versa, my mum will blame my dad, and it's like this blaming war. And yeah, he just said sorry, and I just didn't expect it. I thought he was going to start defending himself or whatever. He just said sorry, and that was, for me, just that one word meant quite a lot. And then since then I've able to understand their relationship was so toxic. It was hard to...
So you start to show a bit of empathy,
Yeah.
and start to see it from other sides, and you kind of got the answer and the clarity that you might have needed at that time.
100%. Yeah.
That's deep though, very deep. Him, I guess, let me just flip it a little bit actually. So there's a lot of children or teenagers I work with who I would say, I throw it out there, I don't really like the word, but like daddy issues, for example. I don't know what the right terminology would be, but a lot of the teenagers that I work with, they really have difficult relationships or no relationships with their dad.
Yeah.
And sometimes you hear stories and whatever. I know some grown adults who've walked away from their children and they're not friends of mine, but they blame the mum for everything, this and that. And in reality, sometimes I think it just takes, I'm sorry. I could have done better. I made a mistake.
And it's that simple. And I think through, actually, it's just come to me.
You sometimes get 30, 40, 50-year-olds who still have, say, daddy issues, for example.
And one of the things you said, what did you learn from that? And I'm just it's just light bulbs just come off. It's accountability for my own actions as a parent.
Wow.
Like, I know, like, sometimes I rarely shout at my kids. Like, I learnt it from being a teacher, actually. I remember when the only way I could deal with low-level disruption was to shout when I first started teaching. And it was the only way I could felt, but then the kids get used to it, and then it becomes just
part of their language.
A tool that doesn't work. And I remember, luckily I had a really good mentor called Mary and Moira, who sort of taught me how to teach. And Emil, he was like the best teacher I've ever met in my life. Like, he was one of the greatest. He did so much for me as a student as well as a teacher, and he sort of taught me how to get on the level with the young people, how to speak to them.
Because where do you go from shouting?
Yeah, it was weird.
There's nowhere you can really go, and especially depending on like your upbringing. sometimes shouting is the only form of communication in the household. So then you go to school and you get shouted at. It's not effective because I can shout back.
Yeah, and these kids, man, they might be getting shouted at home all the time. They don't want to get shouted at school.
Yeah.
Like for me, you don't want to be shouted at constantly. And I remember when I was in school, I was naughty. So I was getting this, and I was naughty at home. Like I weren't naughty at home, but my dad was always strict on us. And I remember it was just always being recognised for the bad that I was doing. So like I said, being accountable as a parent for me is like, if I don't know, you mess up as a parent loads, man.
Of
like,
course.
I don't know, I might shout on my kid sometime when it's probably over something really small, and then I'm really sorry, I apologise.
But we also have negative biases, right? So it's like, you could spoil your children, take them to all these events, Teletubbies, you take your children to, you can take them Disneyland, but they still remember that one time you may have chucked the remote control at them. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you got that negative bias. You're like, is that the only thing you remember from your childhood?
And do you know what? I get really stressed with my youngest because she's the most affectionate. My oldest is not really affectionate, never really been affectionate. She just likes to get on with her own thing. But my youngest is really affectionate. And then when she's not affectionate towards me, I get really hurt. So like if she gets in our bed, she's 5, she'll get in our bed at 4 a.m. every day. And I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, give daddy. She's like, get off me, no. And I'm like, I hate you now. Yeah. Like I don't say that, but in my mind I'm like, but I want some.
But my 4-year-old's like that a little bit when he's shopping. He's like, you're not my best friend. I'm like, why? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You can have it back.
Yeah.
And he's like, no.
But it's the best thing being a parent, and I think.
Is that because you thrived on trying to get your attention from parents growing up? So you're like overcompensate it with your children?
I don't know.
Like for me, like I barely was like hugged and said I love you and this. So like I'm always constantly kissing my children.
Do you know it's the weirdest thing because my parents, no matter what they put us through, whatever they went through, they did always tell us they loved us.
Wow.
Always. My dad's the hardest, strongest guy I know in my brain that I've met in my life. But he's always been really open about his feelings. And
it sounds like your dad has gone through like the biggest growth.
Yeah, but he's been like this even when we was kids and he was going through his hard time. But I think when you look at my grandparents, my granddad was very, very hard. My dad had a really bad childhood when he grew up. Like my granddad used to beat him properly all the time, and my nan had the kindest heart. And I feel like he took from both of them. But as he's getting older as well, he's sort of taken the nan side more. But then he still has these like little glimpses of like being this old-fashioned. That's the best word to it. Very old-fashioned.
You know you're in trouble when he starts shadow boxing.
Oh mate, when he calls you by your first name, like your full name, or like he does my head in, man. He rings me, like he had all boys before, he had loads of boys, so he used to give us a smack around, whatever, like, but with his girls, he just won't lay a hand on them, right? So he'll ring me, he's got a 15-year-old at the moment, Lily, he'll ring me and he'll be like, can you speak to your sister? I don't know how to deal with her, if she's not in school. So I have to get a train, bro, to Peterborough from London and walk around the block with her and chat to her, or just ring her and like, to help him in that, because he's got all girls, and you know what they're like now.
How many children does he have?
9, and then 13 including step.
Wow.
Yeah, he's been married 4 or 5 times. Yeah.
Wow.
He likes a party. He does.
Does that affect your relationships at all?
Nah, I feel like.
Or did you ever doubt getting married?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Do you know what? I say this all the time to people. I didn't believe in marriage. Like I felt like marriage was just the title. It weren't really anything to do with feeling. It was just I don't know. I just never believed in it. My dad got married and he get a divorce. I think his shortest marriage was 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Didn't mean anything to me. And I remember one day, like I've been with my wife for 10 years, right? Just over, and I was sitting there.
And how old are you?
30. So we've been together a long time. And I remember thinking, we got married 2.5 years ago. No, 1.5 years ago. And I was sitting there one day and I was like, I'm really not happy if you're not happy. Like if you're not happy, I don't get a sense of happiness in my life when you're not happy. And then that's when I was like, I want to be with you for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And I feel that concept of picking someone. Look, there's billions of people in the world, yeah, and we just look at someone and go, you're right, I'll spend every day with you. I feel like it's a weird, crazy concept, but we do it. And it came through my head like, I want to spend every day with her. She's my best mate. She knows me inside out. She'll tell me when I'm wrong. She'll tell me when I'm right. Do you know what I mean? And we grow in different ways. She's the opposite to me, but we have the same values, which is really important. And then I proposed to her and got married, and I never ever want to get a divorce. Never. Like that would be I feel like I've failed really bad as a man, not even as a man, as for someone that's witnessed my dad go through so many well, I've only witnessed one, I think, when I was young, but then he had previous marriages before that. So it's like, I feel like getting married
Your dad and your mum was on and off for a long time?
Yeah, 17 years they're on and off. Yeah, so my dad had quite a few kids before that, and then when they finally,
deep, man.
Yeah, and he's got three from his current wife. His youngest is the same age as mine. Yeah, he's got a 5-year-old, yeah. And his oldest is 40, bro. I'm not even lying. I swear. So my daughter's auntie's basically the same age. I think there's like 9 months difference.
So I think when you go through stuff, you either follow a similar path. Do you feel that instinct in you? You either follow a similar path or you go the complete opposite way. So like you'll be a great dad because of things you've been through and you've seen, or it can make you the same.
Yeah, it's weird. I think you have glimpses of both. So sometimes I think I had to learn to be a dad. I think I thought I'd feel more needed as a parent at the beginning than what I was. So I don't know, like my wife breastfed and everything, and I was just there like doing a nappy. Like, I felt so useless as a dad because they've got this natural bond with their mum. So at first I was like, yeah, I thought this human being would need me more or need us equally, but they don't. Like at that beginning of time, obviously you're there to get up in the middle of the night and make a bottle if she can't breastfeed because of whatever reasons, if there's not enough milk there, whatever. It's a really weird thing. But so I think I've grown as a parent. There'll be times, I'll be honest, bro, there'll be times where I've had real bad mental health sort of dips, and I'll go out on a bender and go out on the night out on Friday, come home Saturday morning and stay in bed all day, like. And do you know what I mean? And I've been selfish in that aspect, and I remember witnessing that as a child.
When was the last time that happened? Be honest.
I'd say about 4 years ago. Yeah, man. So I feel like moving into the house, when we bought our house, moving into that was sort of, because I think it was really difficult during lockdown. I remember during lockdown I had this big mental health dip. I was drinking like 15 bottles of bud a night, every night.
You say you witnessed that at home?
Yeah, I witnessed that at home. I used to come downstairs and like you'd see bottles and stuff. Dad had a party or your mum's had a party. That all seems fun, man, when you're young, because you're like, I get to step later because all my dad's friends are here and they're all having a drink or whatever. And then, but it's not. And I don't want my kids to wake up and see bottles of beer or whatever. So it's something I've had to learn on the job.
Of course.
As such, it's not like I was instantly a really good parent because I had a bad life. It weren't like that at all. It was, you've had a bad life, you're trying to filter out the badness of
trying to find the answers, the solutions, and
because I don't think I really knew who I was either.
Do you feel like you know who you are now?
Yeah, definitely 100% now. When I think I only really got to know who I was just probably like 6 months before I got married. I think I started going. You go counselling for such a long time, and the only things I have unanswered are the things I don't remember. But like when I was a child, but then when you go as an adult.
So it appears to me that, you're very human.
Yeah.
And I feel like I know some of the internal stuff you kind of been through growing up, because what you've shared to me off camera, and I also can see that you're a thinker. But you on social media and on TV, you're very outgoing, you're quite loud, do you know what I mean? You've got this real positive element to you. How do you, is it a struggle putting a mask on sometimes?
Yeah.
because I'm not saying that it's inauthentic, because you're truly you. It's a
Yeah.
side of you, but I also see there's another side of you. This side of you,
Yeah.
like caring, kind, thinking, and I've also seen the side of you when we go to a school and teachers and everyone's taking pictures with you, and you're on it. And the same as me, when I walk into a school, you're switched on. You've got to be on it, and it's like two different sides in a way. But like, you've kind of mastered the mask.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because like I get anxiety sometimes, so I get really bad travel anxiety. That's the worst for me. Like, I want to get somewhere and just
mate,
do
can
it.
you get the train to Bristol, please? 5 hours later.
No, like for this it's fine, because I've done like 1,000,001 podcasts, so I'm fine. But it's the like traveling to a job, traveling to a school, and I just want to be able to click my fingers and be there and just get on with it. It's the like, oh, I've got to travel, like that's the hardest part. But I get anxiety, and when I'm able to master, I don't know how I've been able to master. I get there and I'm like snap into it and stuff. And my aim for like the next couple of years is to work and get into as many schools and share my story of me, who I am, but also not just that, via social media, via TV. Like, people have seen who I am as a person on near enough every day, how I am, but no one knows where I come from, what the backstory is, and why I am like that. I'm happy-go-lucky because I don't judge anyone, because who am I to judge anyone when I've been through what I've been through and probably done. I've not been the perfect person in my life. So it's like, who am I to judge?
The perfect person doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, it doesn't, exactly. So
I struggle when people heavily criticize people, because nobody's perfect. Like,
no one
and
is.
anybody can have that. Like, what's the old saying? You don't throw stones from glass houses or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think we're all in glass houses, really. Like, do you know what I mean? Because like, as balanced as you, like, life is about balance. So yes, Cameron can, like, I can be really kind and caring, but I can also be quite selfish and a bit of an a-hole sometimes. Do you know what I mean? So it's like balance. And when you think somebody's too amazing, then you put them on a pedestal and you create this like fairy tale of what this person's like, which is only going to set you up for
disappointment.
Yeah, disappointment. Where it's like, is somebody is so giving, they can also be selfish. Happy, they can be sad. So it's like, it's about that balanced approach, I think.
Yeah.
But talking about what you're doing, and you said about you had a bit of a mental health dip after the Traitors. How did you like feel about the possibility of being on national TV, becoming the Wilfred you are today, but also handling criticism, right? Being on like being there. You can't control it anymore. You're part of this machine, which means people can put their opinions into the machine and take you for everything you've got, pretty much.
Do you know what? It's really weird, because I believe, because I've done social media for so long, you understand that everyone's got an opinion. And if you put things out there on social media, or you go into a school and you share your story, or you go on TV and you do this, you give people the permission to have an opinion of you. So you can't be pissed off with their opinion, sorry for swearing, but you can't be annoyed by their...
We've not established whether you can swear on this or not. I said a-hole earlier.
Sorry,
if we're swearing asshole, okay, it's out there.
Yeah, but yeah, we don't... if you give them permission to have an opinion. So for me going on television, I was like, I'm going on TV, I've just got to suck it up because I put myself there. If people don't like it, they won't like it. Saying that, you do get this anxiety. I remember there was an episode, after episode 6, like I basically backstabbed another traitor, and and I remember going on to Twitter for some reason, and I was #1 trending in the UK.
Wow.
Wilf the snake, and I was like, wow, like everywhere, and I was like, oh my god, I can't sleep now, and that was really the worst of it. And then after
but
that,
the next day, next show is,
and then everyone was like, actually he's all right, and I think because I didn't win the show, I think if I won the show, people wouldn't have liked me. But when I lost the show and I finally showed who I was, because I didn't really care. I was just happy for whoever won. Like I went on there.
What did you win if you won?
120 grand.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, it was 100 and something grand, but we could have won 120 if we won more missions. But so I weren't, honestly, I was just a bit like, I didn't expect to be there. I was just happy. I was like, oh my God, I feel so good that this pressure's gone off me. I don't care. And I think people were like, actually, he's all right. He's a nice guy. He's just played the game. And then, so for me, it was a bit weird, but I liked it after the show more than when the show was out. When the show was coming out, so you had 3 episodes a week on for a month. Every episode I hated watching, just because I was just anxiety of what people are thinking about you.
Did you watch it before it was released?
Nah. So we had to watch it at the same time as
Live.
everybody else. Only what episode 1 we got to watch like 2 days before or a day before that it got released. So
After some episodes, were you like gassed? Like, yeah, I look sick.
no.
No.
It was so weird. I was just sitting there like, nah, man, I don't know. You get scared of loads of different things. It can be, all I cared about was like, what are people thinking? Are people hating? Are they enjoying it? Is it actually doing well? Is it good TV? There are loads of different questions. And then after the show, I've loved every minute of it, man. Like, even though I've had bit mental health dips where, like, I made the risk of leaving my solid salary, good job to make content and work on TV and do stuff. And there are months that you struggle more than others. Like, some months you can have a really good month, and then the others you're like, this is a dip. And then the mistakes that I was making was putting money into savings that you can't access. Like, thinking, yeah, I'll just throw it in this ISA or whatever, and then don't realise actually you've got a month where you're not earning. So you're like, oh no. So I've had to learn a lot over the last couple of years of being.
Was it all worth it?
Yeah, man. Like, my dream before I was on TV, my actual dream was to start a degree in psychology and counselling.
Wow.
Yeah, so I actually applied and everything. Had got all the books at home for Open University to do psychology and counselling. The dream was to counsel young people through boxing, dance, and social media. So to create a space where there's a boxing gym, an amateur boxing gym, and a dance space, and have like this production room where they can edit content, and I can teach them how to make content, and just get them there and just support them through that. That was my dream, and I've been able to sort of do that without actually getting a degree. So I'm able to go into schools and talk to young people and try and inspire them, not as much counselling, but inspire them to do better without having a degree. But I do want to do a degree.
Let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
You got your tough dad who's a professional boxer.
Yeah.
You're boxing.
Yeah.
Really masculine.
Yeah.
Or perceived to be.
Yeah.
Dance.
Yeah, man. That was a weird story. That was a weird day of my life. I remember. So I was an amateur boxing champion. So, like, I was in the final of the Golden Gloves, won all the regional titles, won everything you could possibly win apart from the last hurdle. But silver medalist, all this sort of stuff. Did really well. And then all of a sudden, I go home one day, and my dad put us in so much pressure. It weren't just him pressurising us. It was also, it's just a hard industry to be in terms of you have to train hard, man. And when you're doing education, I was training near enough every night. My dad had his own gym, so I'd just go there. I was training every night. I was running at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 or 5 miles every day, coming home, getting a quick shower, going to school. My teachers had protein shake in their drawers, because my dad would be like, he needs to take this protein shake at this time. Like, it was really bad, like, mad. And I was in the paper because I was like in the run-in to be nominated for the Olympics, and it was mad. Like, my life.
What age?
I was 15, like, at my peak.
But at the same time, you was getting excluded.
No, so I got excluded. So it's a really weird story. So I started boxing in about year 8, did really well. Year 9 is when I got excluded. And when I was permanently excluded, I wasn't allowed to train because I was like, you get sanctioned through boxing because it was through violence. Yeah, so I was sanctioned, so I weren't allowed to box for a certain amount of time. Yeah, it's good if you use violence on the street or outside the ring. It's actually classes. So if you do common assault towards someone, it actually goes up to like ABH, GBH, because you're trained to use your hands, so they class them as weapons, basically. So,
well, Faye we had on, she talks about you shouldn't take away somebody's love and passion. So we had a bit of a debate earlier about that, which is interesting.
Do you know what? It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's a very strange way. It's like one of the things I'm looking at the moment is, footballers with gambling addicts, like with gambling addictions. It's like they're being sanctioned for something that's an addiction that they might be struggling with. So you've got loads of different areas, and that's how it was with me. I got taken my boxing license for that time. Went back into year 10, so I was permanently excluded. The school got knocked down. They built a new academy which had performing arts and dance, which the school didn't before. It was like a regular comprehensive. You did humanities, and that was it. There weren't no performing arts. It was like English, maths, science, humanities, DT, and that was it. And year 10, got back, was allowed to fight again, did really well. and then started dancing after school. So we had to stay in school till 4 o'clock, 4:15, to do enrichment, it was called. So they introduced this new thing where you'd finish mainstream school in at 3:15 and you had to stay till 4 and do some kind of enrichment, which could have been anything. You had to choose from a big list. So I picked dance because I'd seen this dance teacher. He was male, he was cool, like Emil his name is. I was like, yeah, this dude's cool. I'd like to learn from him. Started dancing and then did quite well in that. And then I went home one day, I was like, yeah, I don't want to box anymore. I want to be a dancer. I was like Billy Elliot, man. He was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? But went nuts. Said, you're not doing it. And then he came to watch me perform and he thought I was doing ballet and stuff. I was doing street dance. And then when he watched me, he was like, actually, you can do it. And that was the biggest, most weirdest experience, having my dad say, like, cry. He was crying watching me because he could see how much I loved it and I was just enjoying my life. And boxing's a different kind of expression.
I am going to be attending a very special event. So mark your calendars for the 11th and 12th of November, where myself and other professionals will be at the Education Forum. The Education Forum provides a platform for you to discover the latest enhancements in technology, curriculum resources, and facilities management. There will be top suppliers, one-to-one meetings, networking, and an opportunity to develop your knowledge through educational seminars. This special event is not to be missed by senior educational professionals. For more information, head over to education-forum.co.uk to find out more. I will be there, mark your calendars, and see you there.
Why do you feel like he didn't want you to do dance to begin initially?
I think he's like, don't forget, times have changed, haven't they? When dance, when I was in school, was people would call it gay, or people would use bad language against it and say, yeah, it's not for guys, it's all of this sort of stuff. And my dad just had this perception of me in a leotard. And like I said, my dad comes from a very traditional...
I'd pay to see that.
Yeah. my dad's been in a very old school environment all of his life. So
even if your dad said, oh, that's gay, what about friends in school?
Yeah, friends, bro. I had to cut off relationships in school, like friendships, because some of my friends were saying the same as my dad, innit? I was one of the cool kids and I hung around with, as we'd call them, like roadmen, or, I was hanging around with these people and some of them were like, nah, bro, nah. And then I just ended up spending my lunchtimes and breaks in the dance studio dancing. A lot of my friends, my best friends, were like, yeah, go for it, man, like really supportive. But I believe in, from probably that age is where I started surrounding myself with people that fueled my fire and didn't piss on it. Like, that's how I think about it. I don't like surrounding myself with people that aren't there. It sounds really selfish, but if you're not there to benefit each other, then what are you there for? Even if it's as a friend, as a mental health companion or whatever, if you're surrounding yourself with people that aren't supporting you or you're not supporting them, and it's just a weird, what's the point? It's a waste of time. That's how I see it. I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess, what was said about you dancing is an element of toxic masculinity in many ways.
Yes.
Do you feel like you've experienced that growing up? Like, even myself, I probably was a kid at that time who would have said similar things. Or I remember even at that time going to my friend's house and his dad was there and his dad kissed him on the head. And I remember it now, and it's like, I'm embarrassed to say it now, isn't it? But I was like, that's gay, you let your dad kiss you? Like, what? Yeah. But actually at that time, I would love to have a hug or kiss from, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that word was thrown out there a lot, and that element of toxic masculinity. Then it affects obviously girls in schools, and it's still very much there. And a phrase what kind of is thrown about, especially when I get inquiries through kind of my website, is this laddish culture. Why do you think, like, what is being a man to you? What is a man?
Being a man,
to you,
for me, is being the best version of yourself around the people and to positively impact the people around you. For me as a man, like in terms of, I'm a father to two kids, 2 girls and a wife. Like, I've got a wife, so it's like, for me,
sounded like you had 3 kids.
No, it does. Yeah, no, I haven't. I definitely haven't. So I'm trying to say I've got 3 women at home, basically. Like, 2 kids, 1 wife. But do Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I want to make sure, for me, I want to be the man. I want my kids to bring home a man who would be like me. Like, does that make sense?
Be a role model, yeah.
Be a role model to them. Who would you want your daughters to date? Be that person. So for me, being a man is that, but also I feel like being a man is being able to say, like, to remove yourself from it. So, you know, we've got this culture where it's like, you're a man, do this, like, blah, blah. It's like, remove yourself and figure out who you are yourself, man. You don't need somebody to tell you and drum into your mind who you are. And it's really bad at the moment because I feel like we're going to go through, I feel like it's only just beginning. I feel like in 10 years' time, it's going to be a really strange environment, because especially with boys at the moment, because they're getting loads of things drummed in their head. That doesn't, for me, it's just, doesn't seem like the right thing. I completely get that everybody wants to work for themselves. I completely agree, everybody, we've got this money, cash, and people want to make money. I always say to people when I go into schools, the only way you can get rich is no such thing as passive income. You need multiple streams of income.
People look over also the idea of active income, right?
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with active income, working for, but also then back to this whole idea of being rich, and like you see it all the time on TikTok, people saying, school's bad, school's this, school gets stuck you in the system, and it's just they go on and you need a dream. They don't want you to have a dream, but at the same time, not everyone wants a dream. Not everyone needs a dream. You also need people to work on the bins. Yeah. You also need cleaners. You also need, like, everyone's on their own, but there's no one's better than the other.
No.
But it just has to be different just for our society to work. Because if everyone was entrepreneurs, society wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work. But this is what I mean. So when I've met so many people.
I can imagine.
That you're like, what do you want to do in your life? You've met so many young people. So you ask them, what do you want to do in your life? They're not sure. They're happy to some people are just happy to get a job. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with someone going, I don't know, man, I just want to play my console, get a normal job, come home. Like, I remember my ex-girlfriend, her brother, he was the happiest man in the world, bro. He worked in a prison and played Call of Duty every night. And he was just happy. And that was it. He'd go to work for X amount of hours, come home, play his console. He was the happiest man. He earned good money. He had all the gadgets that he wanted. They weren't like this, I want to be rich. And he was just happy and content in his life. And there's nothing wrong with just, people might want that. Like, I know for me, I know what I want to have in my life. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to have the same thing. And I feel like there's this,
and that's where I used to be, say 12 years ago when I first started. You got to have a dream, believe the dream. But over time, you change.
Yeah, well, I go into school and I say to people, what's your job? What's your dream job? What is the job you'd like to get when you finish education? And a lot of the time, it's the same thing. Some people are, I want to be a doctor. Okay, and then you realize, actually, my dream job is just my job, and it's actually not that hard to get if I put work into it. You know, and you ask them, how are you going to get there then? And they say, okay, I'm going to get this in my GCSEs, go on to A-levels to do this, and go to uni to do this, X, Y, and Z. And they know their pathway. And I feel like when I hear it cringes me out, man, when you ask people what you want to be, an entrepreneur, and they don't actually understand what it means. And you're like, in what? Like I said at the beginning, they go, I don't know.
And this is what I talk about. I say, you do know building a business is boring. How is it boring? Of course, it's like building a business isn't what you see on TikTok. I'm saying, if you can't sit there for an hour after school doing maths because maths is boring, then you ain't going to be able to run a business, because growing a business is boring. You don't just get this massive level of success, what you're aspiring to, by doing what everyone else does. Like, you're kind of doing the work most people don't want to do, which means it's very, very hard to do. And if you do that on a consistent basis over a long period of time, you increase your chances of success. But it's like, but that process, most of the time, is boring. This is fantastic.
Yeah, this is cool.
Editing it, me preparing all your notes I've not even looked at yet, all of that is pretty boring.
Yeah,
right?
It's everything else. Like, for me, so I started my first business when I was 19, so I started my dance company, and I failed maths in GCSE. I had to retake it when I became a teacher.
Did you pass it?
Yes, I did, yeah. And I didn't realise how important learning how to use spreadsheets and all this sort of stuff, because I was doing all my own taxes, so I was running my business, so I was like doing all the spreadsheets and all of that stuff, and that's boring, man. All of that, the stuff, organising stuff. Like, I'm guessing you going into schools and all this, like, risk assessments, all of this sort of stuff that comes along with it is boring. And if people don't want to put the work in, like I say to young people now, do you love English and maths? Do you want to do it next year? I say it to year 11s. They go, nah. Like, just do it now then, because you're going to need it at some point. You're going to have to, if you want to go into an apprenticeship, your name's going to be at the bottom of the pile. And the people at the top of the pile are people with the GCSEs. Like,
and if you can't do it with the accountability and the support around you now, you don't get that in college.
Yeah,
so,
college is different.
Yeah.
People don't understand. I say this all the time. When I went to college.
You don't show up.
I went to college. I went there for 3 months. I went back to sixth form. I just wasn't pushed. I went there and they went, so have everyone got their coursework? I went, what do you mean? I haven't been asked for it every day. Like, you haven't been telling me what to do every day. You've just gone, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. Go off and do it. And then all of a sudden I was asked for it, and I was like, I need to go back to sixth form. I need a teacher to tell me every day. Like, college was weird for me. I don't know what they're like now.
So, second to last kind of question. If you had a magic wand and you could fix anything with inside education, fix, improving, develop, whatever, what would you do?
There's one big fix, right? But it causes, it's like 1,000,001 things have to happen.
Okay.
My one fix was to make teachers enjoy it again. And I feel like teachers, my wife's a teacher and a lot of her friends are teachers, and I feel like the aspect of actually teaching and being there with the young people and enjoying that experience of teaching them, and that you know that feeling when a child gets something and they're like, oh, I understand it now. It's such a good feeling. And I feel like the pressures of everything else that they have on them now, like, I get the planning's important, the marketing's important, but there's so much for them to do, so many hours to teach, so many kids. I feel like there just needs, I don't know what the solution is to make all teachers enjoy their job anymore, because I think the average teacher, what is it, they teach for 4 or 5 years now and then they leave. I think that's the stat, but that's ridiculous, because I remember when all of the marking and all that, like, probably education wasn't as good back then either, but I remember going to school and somebody taught my dad, bro. Like, someone was like, are you related to Gordon? I was like, that's my dad. He's like, I used to teach him. It's like, what?
Teachers in the same school for 15, 20 years, yeah.
And now I don't feel like they...
Is that just teaching though, or is that just the way our society is?
I don't know, man. It's a big question, isn't it? I feel like...
It's interesting, actually.
I do feel like education is sad. It's a really hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing to do now with all the extra stuff that teachers have to do. Even though it's important, is there a way we can make it even easier? And I feel, it's sad, man. I don't think, I don't know the actual answer, but if I could have wave my wand so all teachers enjoyed it and just enjoyed doing their job. Because I remember the teachers, when I was in school, enjoyed it and enjoyed everything they were doing. That made me want to do it more, because I could tell they enjoyed it. And I remember going into some lessons where they knew it was a chore. And they were like, yeah. And you're just like, I'm disengaged here, man. But teachers are putting on their faces all the time in front of the kids, even though they're not enjoying it nowadays. Back then, they weren't good at masking it. I remember teachers coming hungover and they'd just tell us. And they'd be like, I'm hungover, like, just do what you did last lesson. Like, I remember it. But nowadays, teachers will mask it and pretend to be happy just for the young people. But then as soon as they walk out the door, that's the best part of it. It's why I would never teach again. I would never teach again, just because of everything else. The best thing was working with the young people and being because I was young myself, they'd come to me with their problems, and like, I'd have to write 1,000,001, we used to call them pink slips, like if there was something going wrong in their house or whatever. I remember them coming and disclosing stuff and me having to write them up and whatever. But I remember that experience itself was amazing, working with young people, watching them grow, and then you'd see them 3-4 years after and you'd be like, they've turned out to be really decent human beings, even though they might not have been at the time. It's a weird thing. And then it was everything else that's on top of it, the pressures of being... Why are there so many meetings now? There's so many meetings for teachers, man. My wife's in so many meetings. It's like, after this and this and this.
Interesting.
And not enough PP time or whatever. It's a strange. She does love her job though. She's obsessed with it. She'll never leave teaching, but she does. I don't think she struggles as much as some people do. Some people do. But I don't know how my wife does it because she comes home and never works. She gets it all done in school.
That's good.
Yeah, it's really good. I have no idea how she does it, but she doesn't have lunch anymore. She eats while she's working, and I'm like, that's not right. And she shouldn't have to come home and try and work all the time. So how do they get the balance right? I don't know. But yeah, that was my magic one question. Bit long one.
Amazing. And where can people find you?
On Instagram at Wilfred Webster Official, or TikTok Wilfred Webster.
Amazing.
Or on your website.
And you're going to be doing some stuff on Dreams to Reality as well. Amazing. There's another incredible episode of the School Podcast. Thank you. Of course, like, comment, subscribe. If there's any guests you would like me to interview and sit down with, then do send those guests through to me. With that said, thank you, Wilfred, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.